During the course of the audit, we work with management so that there's no surprises at the end of the audit. We don't just simply give an audit report and say, surprise, like, I mean, these are all observations we've made and concerns that we have. We sit down with management as we go through the audit and say exactly what our concerns are so that they have time to address them. And as you can see, by the end of June of this year, 5 of the 7 recommendations will be completed. And also the formal vendor evaluation criteria will be developed by mid-2010.
But on that point,
George. Yeah.
On that point, there was a procedure set up years ago for vendor recognition. Did you find any trace of it?
It's just an informal vendor performance review right now. It's an ad hoc thing. It's not. There's no formal process in there. Now, personally, while
there was a policy established that every vendor, and especially on major contracts, that when we had bad experience, and we have had some bad experience, there was a policy established years ago that the vendor would be categorized. And in fact, some would be cut off for future contracts. Did you find no trace of it?
No, it's not there.
The answer is no.
Well, it was set up, I can tell you.
I remember the discussion.
Do you remember?
I remember the discussion.
Some of you have been around a while would remember. It was set up, so obviously it got lost in the shuffle somewhere. Because we ran into some bad examples. And that's when we set up the policy. That's years ago, that's not 10 years ago. Would I be right? At least. So what happened to it?
There is some mention in the purchasing bylaw where we would be able to, or the purchasing agent has the authority to prevent a bidder from bidding in future contracts, but we have not been able to find any detailed processes relating to what you're talking about.
Okay.
Something that we should look into, I guess, for the future, because I remember the discussion.
That's what the recommendation is. So
I'm getting a little frustrated as mayor that we set up policies and then they're not followed, and that's what bothers me. Because I was in the business in the private sector, handling millions of dollars of contracts. And it's been something I've been promoting as control of contracts. And that policy was set up because we ran into one that we were behind $2 million, I remember. Anyway. So now we're going to set one up. Fine.
Yeah.
If we set one up, it better be followed. That is the key. No use setting them up if it's not going to be followed. You know, I don't know why there's such disregard for policy.
Just to conclude, working with facility and property management, we've had a good rapport with them, and I just want to thank
The guy that did the renovations at the, I hope he never sees another contract.
Yeah.
Right?
And the one at the Contrast.
And the one at the contract.
That was
and I'll be honest with you, that's
No, that was a bad one.
I think that's when it was raised.
Yeah, that
for
one.
Beamer.
and that's a follow-up of this audit. And Mayor, that contractor, again, there's no formal evaluation for those contractors, and that's why we recommended that be formalized and documented.
There was even an evaluation form used many years ago because of our bad experience with contractors. You can see their name top of the game being awarded a contract.
Any other questions on this?
Again, I'm going to raise the issues that I raised under the external audit. I don't expect an answer today, but I think this is probably the appropriate forum to bring a report back to. I'm surprised that it wouldn't have been caught through audits in the past, notwithstanding how did we get to 12 years of not charging utilities, and of course now we're going to try and play catch up. And I'd like some answers as to how we got to where we are today and what we put in place to ensure that it doesn't happen again. I know there's more besides the 2 in my ward. Staff did confirm that. I didn't go into the details, but there are others that have fallen through the cracks, so to speak. So I'd like the report to come back to audit.
Okay.
Well, I'm not happy with the report, I can tell you. I'm not happy with the contents of the report. There seems to be a complete disregard for policy, following policy. However, there's no form to evaluate document vendor performance. there was not followed, in my opinion. And then it goes on, I mean, there's so many things in this report that indicates the contractor could receive double credit for the deposit when it's eventually refunded by the region. I mean, I don't want to go into the item. This is not a good report on the management of the finances of the contract. I'm sorry. It is a very poor report, very poor performance. And we've dealt with contracts over the years. It's been one of the things of the Audit Committee, because we're issuing contracts for millions of dollars. And here we have one guy approving, could result. Where's the one that one person has been given authority or has assumed authority? Sales taxes. We don't know where we're going on sales taxes. You know, I read this report, and it's very discouraging, I have to tell you, as mayor, of the control of contracts. It's hard to determine whether we came out on top or came out way, there it is. In general, there's segregation of duties in the processing and approval of payments. We dealt with that years ago, that there should be a process of approval of payments, not one individual given. Well, we did find in one part the project manager was the only one involved in verifying, processing, and approving payments for cash allowance and extra items. That's one that you looked at. How many more that you didn't look at as the same arrangement? I don't know. I'm very disappointed, I have to tell you. This is not a good report. And boy, there needs to be some tough action taken to implement financial controls, I gotta tell you. It's just not a good report.
Just on a clarification though, I agree with you, Madam Mayor, there's things highlighted in here that the staff have to take actions on. But some of the things that have been identified in here have been corrected and improvements. There have been significant improvements since the whole audit process has begun.
When?
In 2007 they started.
Yeah.
Now, these projects began before some of the corrections or the improvements have been made in our project management processes. I have staff now from our financial services group who are going in and taking a look at the projects as well in the interim, outside of internal audit, to ensure that they have a project manual in place now and that things are being followed and that the proper documentation and authorization and all the rest is occurring. These projects, 2 of the 3, started before we got all these pieces in place, before we got all these improvements that they've been working on over the last couple of years in place. The most recent project, which was Vic Johnson, was completed after we made all these improvements, and certainly it was much better managed. You can speak to internal audit on that we have made significant improvements in how we are handling our processes. That's not to say there's not still work to be done. There is. I mean, taxes tend to be a complicated area where many of our operating departments are not clear on when, you know, PST versus GST and what's refundable, and we're working on that. As well, the whole legislation is going to change on that when we go to a harmonized tax. So that will impact how we apply taxes as well. But we are still working on it, but I wouldn't want to give you the impression that things have not gotten significantly better since some of the shortfalls you've seen in the projects, which were in fact audited in this report, because it's not the case. There have been significant improvements.
Brenda,
Yeah.
that is now.
Yeah, that's right.
A lot of these items that are in here were dealt with years ago. The policy, the corrections, the advice, etc. at audit committees. So if any improvements have been made, it's only recently. And that to me doesn't answer my question. A lot of the things in here were dealt with years ago. And it's a complete disregard for policy, following policy in my opinion. Why would anybody on a major contract be the one signing officer to approve all payments and all credits and everything? Not acceptable. And that has been in place for years and years. But other, you know, there's audit reports. I have a stack of them like this. And I'm going to go through when I have time to point out that many of the things in here were dealt with years ago. Dealt with years ago. and are not being followed.